Hello students. Today's video is dedicated to covering some experiments that are done or conducted by scholars, by linguists, by trainers to animals to test and to know later whether these animals, some selected of course animals, were able to imitate or to use some properties that are discussed that are put for humans, and these properties were discussed in the other video. So before all, we have to know that we have a number of researchers, as I said, who have been successful in teaching some animals, to make gestures similar to sign language, but they were not able or were not after making these animals talk human-like. So the question is also about these animals to be able to imitate, to use these properties or not. Now, talking animals, or let's say speaking animals, are any non-human animals that can produce sounds or gestures resembled in human language. So several species or groups of animals have developed particular forms of communication, which superficially, and when we say superficially, it is not natural, of course, resemble verbal language. However, these usually are not considered a language because they lack the properties that we discussed in the last video. Here we have in the book, as you can see, so if these properties make a human language such a unique communication system. So because of the properties discussed earlier, they make human language unique for communication. So through these properties, the distinguished properties of humans make them able to communicate with each other. Then it would seem extremely unlikely that other creatures would be able to understand it. There is a lot of spoken language directed by humans to animals. So we have, of course, many of us, many people have pets at home. So they make some particular agreed upon gestures or maybe some spoken words to these pets, and these pets respond to these to the signs or to some spoken words conducted by humans or by trainers successfully. But that doesn't mean that these animals or species are able to speak. Now, the question raised in the book, should we treat these examples as evidence that non-humans can understand the human language? Probably not. When we say probably, we mean that it is very likely and very close to reality, very close to certainty. The standard explanation is that the standard explanation to the successful response of pets to the trainer is that the animal produces particular behavior, and again here we have what? We have behavior. So it is not that ability of creating a unique communicative system, but it is a kind of behavior, suluk, in response to a particular sound stimulus, but does not actually understand. So here we now become quite sure that the response to these gestures maybe or to the noises made by humans or trainers are not to be explained that these animals understand these sounds. They just imitate some responses conducted by a human or by a trainer. If it seems difficult to conceive of animals, it's difficult to understand that human language, then it appears to be even less likely that an animal would be capable of producing human language. So here we have what, in the beginning, we have a claim, ادعاء, or faradiyya, that some animals are able or might be able to imitate humans' language in terms of communication, of course, or communicative system. But still here we have the big if, the big question, that are they able to understand these gestures or noises made by human? The answer is not. After all, we do not generally observe animals of one species learning to produce the signals of another species. So this is, again, here we have another proof that these only respond to some gestures or to some chunks made by a human, but they are not able to learn to produce new signals. Um, Also, we should keep in mind that you could keep your horse in a field of cows. This is one of the examples. When we put a horse with a group of cows for years, still that horse will not be able to produce sounds that are regularly produced by cows. And in some homes, a new baby and a puppy may arrive at the same time. So if there's another example here that a baby, a new human baby, of course, raised up with a puppy for a period of time, a baby and a puppy grow up in the same environment. They had been offered the same environment, hearing the same things. But 2 years later, what we have is that the baby is making lots of human speech. Why? Because still that human baby is able to develop his own communicative system acquired from those who are around him or her to imitate or to start producing and acquiring the properties of a human language put for communication. But the puppy was not able, of course, to do the same things done by that child. Chimpanzees and language. Here, the book develop some particular, let's say, experiments that are related to training selected chimpanzees and to know later whether these chimpanzees were able to learn some properties or let's say some to develop the ability of understanding as well as using in context using these language or some words or vocabulary that are found in a particular language. Now, in the 1930s, we have two scientists, Laura and Winthrop Kellogg, reported on their experience of raising an infant chimpanzee together with their baby son. So they raised an infant chimpanzee with their baby son. The chimpanzee called Gua, the name of the chimpanzee, was reported to be able to understand, again, able to understand about 100 of words, but did not say even just one single word. So here we have what the report says, that chimpanzee was able to understand some of these words, but the very chimpanzee was not able to produce or to say any of these. Another experiment conducted in the 1940s, a chimpanzee named Vicky was reared by another scientist couple who were Catherine and Keith Hayes. So they did the same thing done by the 1930s experiment by Lula and Winthrop Kellogg in their own home, exactly as if the chimpanzee was their own baby. The parents spent 5 years. So they trained the chimpanzee for 5 years, attempting to get Vicky to say English words by trying to shape her. What they did, how this experiment is different from the other one, from the previous one, is that they trained that chimpanzee to shape her mouth in a way that helped her or may help her to produce these sounds. Eventually, in the end, that chimpanzee managed to produce some words. But what kind of these words? Like mama, papa, or cub. This was a remarkable achievement. Of course, by the end, eventually, it's an achievement. But since it has become clear that non-human primates do not actually have a physical or a physically structured vocal tract. Now, the trouble with that chimpanzee is what? With the vocal tract. It means that what? That the shape or the position of the vocal tract of that chimpanzee forbids her to produce, let's say, a complete or a clear version of mama, papa, or some other human words. Now, like chimpanzee, which is suitable for articulating. Now, vocal tract, as we said before, enable normal human, to articulate the sounds used in speech. Apes and gorillas can, like chimpanzees, communicate with a wide range of vocal calls. They have the vocal tract, but they just can't make human speech. So they have that primitive shaping or primitive, let's say, vocal tract, it is not developed, ليست متطورة, like in a human. So they may develop particular sounds, they may produce particular sounds, but the way of producing these sounds do not are not similar like the clear version of, we say, baba or mama or whatever. They may pronounce the words, I mean chimpanzees, pronounce these words a baby version, like a baby version words. So the baby, we know, is not maybe able, particularly in the early months of after birth, to say papa in a very clear sound or production. So that baby may say papa. So the chimpanzees were able to produce similarly like a baby version speech. Here we have another experiment with Washu, recognizing that a chimpanzee was not likely to learn spoken language. This is the claim, and this is the result. The chimpanzees were not able to produce or to speak human-like languages. Another scientist couple, we have the Petrix and Ellen Gardner, set out to teach a female chimpanzee called Washu to use a version of what. Now the experiment is different from the other ones in terms of what? In terms of training that chimpanzee to learn a version of American Sign Language. As described in this chapter, the sign language has all the essential properties. Why did they choose this type of or this version of sign language? Because it contains essential properties of a human language and is learned by many congenitally deaf. So many deaf children were able to use that sign or that American Sign Language. So they think that this is the typical example or the typical version of sign language, يعني شيء نموذجي. That's why they chose to take it and to articulate or to manipulate their own experiment with this type of the sign language. From the beginning, the gardeners and their research assistants raised Washu like a human child in a comfortable domestic. So it means here they offered that chimpanzee all the domestic environment, all the possible environment to use the language or to use the human language. Sign language, I mean, was always used when Washu was around, and she was encouraged, always she encouraged to use the sign language, okay? Even her own incomplete baby version, you see here, baby version means not that clear sounds, of the signs used by adults. In a period of 3.5 years, Washu came to use, now there is another achievement here, came to use signs for more than 100 words. This is very great achievement, of course, ranging from airplane, of course, not the words, but the signs that resemble these words, baby and banana and so on. Even more impressive was Washu's ability to, now this is another achievement, take these forms and combine them. So Washu was able, a specific chimpanzee, not all chimpanzee, here we need to understand this one. That chimpanzee trained for more than 3.5 years, to use sign language. Later, the achievement says that the forms of that Washu was able to develop another, let's say, another forms or another new result, a new result produced by that chimpanzee, to that it was able to combine these sign language to produce sentences like, for example, Jimmy ticket, more fruit, open food drunk. Of course, these are resembled, يعني متمثلة. These sentences were resembled in sign language, not in real language, not in real spoken words. Still, these, as we can see here, lacking the lacking the syntax. There is no grammar at all. They are just chunks. But still, it is a great achievement. Some of the forms appear to have been inventions by Washu. And in her novel, novel means new here, sign for BIB or BIP, and in the combination of what. Now, that Wasu was also able, the third achievement of Wasu is her ability to invent, to produce, to develop things that she was not trained to do. So what was she able to make these by herself is the combination or the reference of a bird, a water bird, referring to swan. Okay, so that was her own invention. She was not trained to join or to combine some particular sign language, some particular signs in sign language in that American version, but she, by the end, was able to develop things by herself, which would seem to indicate that her communication system had the potential الاحتمالية or القدرة for productivity. Now here the question is about the productivity as a property which is only dedicated for humans. Now, since Washu was able to make things which were new, make things to produce things from her own, she was not trained to use some particular signs to combine a sentence to refer to a swan إلى تلك الأوزة في النهر, but she was creative in producing that one. So now, what about the property of productivity that is dedicated only for humans? This is, again, here we have another debate, another argument. Since this productivity as a property, which is only special for humans, how that chimpanzee was able to produce things from her own? Washu also demonstrated understanding of a much larger number of signs that she produced and was capable of holding rudimentary conversations, random conversations, primitive conversation. It's very basic, mainly in the form of a question and answer. Always here we have what? Question and answer. It is similar to a baby raising in a domestic home, with having all the let's say the enough aspects and good environment for raising a baby, a human baby, in or at home. It's okay. So we cannot, of course, expect from a baby, if he or she is isolated somewhere, to produce a language unless that baby is in contact in everyday conversations with the caregivers, maybe with the parents or somebody else. So here we have what things that should be put in question, that should be thought of twice. Why was Wasu able to produce things new? That thing new has not been. She was not trained to produce such a particular form of sentences. Also, here we have another experiment, which is of Sarah. Now, with Sarah, something special with Sarah. Of course, we are going to know more about her. And at the same time, as Washu was learning sign language, another chimpanzee was being taught by whom? By Anne and David Primack, to use a plastic shapes مكعبات for the purpose of communicating with humans. Now, these plastic shapes represented words, of course, that could be arranged in a sequence to build a sentence. Now, they tested Sarah, these two scholars tested Sarah to arrange these shapes that represent words in similarly like a sentence. These plastic shapes represented words, as we said, that could be arranged in a sequence to build a sentence or sentences. Sarah preferred a vertical order, الشكل العمودي, as shown in this figure. The basic approach, what was her own model, was quite different from that of Gardner's. Sarah was systematically trained to associate these. Now she was trained not to use sign language, but to combine, to associate these shapes, هذه مكعبات, with objects, to refer to what? To objects or actions. She remained an animal in a cage, being trained with food reward. So whenever she did something good, they rewarded يعطوها مكافأة, they rewarded her with something to manipulate a set of samples. Okay, and that thing was food, of course. Once she had learned to use large number of these plastic shapes, Sarah was capable of what? Of getting an apple by selecting the correct plastic shape. Now, this is another thing that we need to think of. Now, how was Sarah able to pick that plastic shape, which represented apple as a word, among many cubes, many plastic shapes? Now, this is very important that Sarah was clever enough to choose that plastic shape or plastic figure. Sarah was capable of getting an apple by selecting the correct plastic shape from a large array. So among many cubes or plastics, Sarah was able to pick the right one. Notice that this symbol is arbitrary. Now the question is not about productivity this time, as was true, but it is about arbitrariness, al-ashwa'iyya, since it would be hard to argue for any natural connection between an apple and a blue, as we studied that time. So arbitrariness talks about the non-relevance of a word with the object. So there is no connection between the word, the very word, and with the object it represents. Sarah was capable of producing sentences. Now this is about the arbitrariness and also about the productivity. Mary gives chocolate Sarah. So this is very primitive sentence, of course, but it means a lot to scientists, to scholars. Sarah was capable of producing sentences, as we said. This is very impressive capability of understanding how to combine or how to choose some selected shapes, plastic shapes, to be put together to form a sentence. To understand complex structures, as if Sarah put red on green, Mary give Sarah chocolate. So this is about the reward. Sarah got the chocolate. So okay, so this is very important also to raise a question. These are the figures to resemble how Sarah was able to combine some particular plastic shapes in order to produce a sentence, and this is very complex, and it is still with a big if, with a big question mark, with a big question how Sarah was able, how Wasu was able to produce something new, how Sarah was able to put plastic shapes together to form a sentence. All these are very important questions. We may probably get an answer to these later.